excited to talk about this. I think this panel is going to go fast. I think 30 minutes is going to go by really quickly. So, because everybody up here has incredible insight and a lot of strong opinions around this topic, to say the least. So, so I'm thrilled to be talking with them now. We're talking about this concept of doing more with less, and I think before we dive in, I'm just going to ask each of you to share briefly a little bit about your company, for lack of a better word. So Ray, perhaps you can start.
Oh, for me? Hi, I'm Ray Inamoto. I'm the founding partner of Inamoto & Co. We are a business invention firm that creates what's next through design, data, and technology. It's a pretty new company. We officially opened our doors on February 1st last year, so about a year and a half. Before that, I was the Global Chief Creative Officer for AKQA for about 11 years. And before that, I was a designer in my 20s at RGA for about 5 or 6 years or so. So AKQA and RGA are the foundation of my background, and started my own firm a year and a half ago.
Great. Rosemarie?
Hi, my name is Rosemarie Ryan. I started a company called Co-Collective almost 70 years ago today, actually. And actually on Sunday. Sunday's our 7-year anniversary. And I started Co because we believe that fundamentally brands and businesses are going to grow through action, not through talk. So we fundamentally believe in the power of story and an organization, not a marketing department, but an organization getting aligned behind what that story is, and then putting that to action through their services, through their products, through what people experience. I started my life as a brand planner and account planner, so I'm very happy to be here with my people. I worked at Chiat Day with Mary Baskin. She hired me. And then went on to Kirsch & Baumer Bond, where I became their president for, I think, almost 10 years. And from there to J. Walter Thompson, where I ran New York and then North America, and then kind of jumped out to start Co. So good to be here. I also tried to hire Ray when I started Co, and he didn't join me. We can talk about that later.
We can talk about that here.
That's a panel. I'm Gareth Kay. I'm one of the founders of Chapter. We're based in San Francisco. We describe ourselves as a creative business partner who make more soulful experiences that close the gap between brands and people. So we're obsessed about finding the human problem that lies behind business problems, applying creativity to those, but making sure that the solutions we come up with are injected with a real sense of who that brand is, so it feels genuinely distinctive and ownable to that company.
Great.
Matt Walsh, founder of Greenstone. My journey actually started at RGA as well. Ray was my first creative director back in RGA days on the Nike team there. Then I wound up doing 8 years at Crispin. I was one of a crew of 4 that wound up blowing out digital at Crispin from the end of 2005 on. I left CPB at the end of 2013 to found Greenstone. My background is a UXer. I've been a UXer my whole career, and I started Greenstone with the intention of designing a company that learned from agencies of the past, but really tried to do something new and was really focused on earning modern loyalty through differentiated and valuable experiences, so you don't have to buy it through advertising points, coupons, gimmicks, and giveaways. And we had a pretty good track record at my past agencies, and Greenstone's been around for about 3.5 years at this point.
So you all stepped away from the traditional agency model. You all came up through that and gained that invaluable experience there, but you stepped away. What was the impetus for doing so? What was sort of driving that decision? And sort of that, when you had that blank piece of paper in front of you, what were you hoping to sort of devise?
Should I start?
Sure.
My case, pretty simple. I had a midlife crisis as I was reaching my 40s, and instead of buying a motorcycle and a leather jacket, I went into a path that I foolishly thought that I would have more control over than driving a motorcycle.
Okay. All right.
That's
And
hilarious. I haven't been through my midlife crisis. I'm still in my late 30s. But so I guess the reason I jumped out was I felt that most of the time, jumped out. Most of our clients were coming to us and looking for us to solve their problems through communications. And I really didn't feel that that was actually going to be the answer to the problem they had. In fact, they hadn't even really defined what the business problem was. And so, it felt dishonest to get in a room and talk to them about how we thought we could help them when advertising was the only thing they were really looking to kind of buy from us.
Fascinating, Gareth.
I think I blame Mark Earls, who some of you may know, the Herdmeister. He once said to me, the thing that a planner should do is be able to look a client in the eye and say, in all conscience,
Yes.
this is what you should be doing. This is the right type of advice. And increasingly, much like Rose, I got to the point where we were having too many meetings where we're saying, here's the ad now, what's the problem?
Yeah.
Or clients coming in to ask us to do paint by numbers to go and solve what was probably the wrong brief in the first place. So I kind of decided that rather than try and change a fantastic ad agency I was working at, I'd try and build something with a blank sheet of paper and just try and build a company where we could apply creativity much more expansively.
I think for me, it was largely, I was very fortunate to work on two teams between Crispin and the Nike RGA team that won a lot of awards, but when I looked in the mirror, I felt like at least third, if not half of what I created helped nobody. Didn't help the client, certainly didn't help the customer. Made a great award show video, made a great Mashable write-up and the like, but I just got so frustrated with not agreeing with the lens that the creative institution used to say that's a good idea, that's a bad idea. And I wanted to be able to significantly affect that lens and also do so in a new kind of system that fixed a lot of the broken models that I thought I'd find if I just went to another agency. And I like the challenge as a UXer of the organizational design of how do you not replicate the mistakes of others and create a more scalable system for a more modern era.
I think the best people in the business want to make a difference to their clients, to the work that they're doing, to the people that they're working with, but to the businesses they're working on. They want to make a difference. And it's getting harder and harder within the established companies to actually do that because you didn't really feel that they were actually looking for you to give them the kind of advice that you would in order to make that difference.
Yeah.
And when I jumped out, I have to be really honest and tell you that we had a good theory about what it was we wanted to get done in the world. We talked about it, we had our own kind of like headline. We want to move clients from being story doers to storytellers. From storytellers to story doers, and we had no clue actually exactly how that was going to work. We knew how to get to a good story. Sure, everybody in this room knows what that looks like. What we realized quickly is that we had to bring the entire organization along on that journey, so it was a very collaborative process. And that, I think, was probably the easiest thing for us to get our head around. But how you actually take that story and then turn that into action, and the broadest way across the organization was probably where the challenge was. And after about 2 years, we had a bit of a crisis about how much stuff we were putting out into the world. And so, because we come from advertising agencies, so we had someone talk to all of our clients, and they came back and they said, your clients said you bring them clarity, you bring them focus, they know what they need to do tomorrow, they know what they need to do next year. What you're making, Rosemarie, is you're making a difference. And I'm like, oh, right, I'd forgotten that's what I really wanted to get done.
Well, I love that it's your individual, it sounds like it's your individual passion that drove you. You knew you wanted to do something more and better, but you didn't have, either the context or the tools with which to do it. And yet what's interesting is you all come from different, arguably different sort of backgrounds, UX, creative, traditional strategy. What was sort of what would you say is something you all had in common, having come from such arguably diverse backgrounds? And sort of also, what was it about your unique background that sort of drove you to do what you chose to do, and how are you pulling from that background in what you're doing now?
Yeah. So we'll go this way, I guess.
Whatever. No, jump in. Whatever you guys. Yeah.
So I had a fancy schmancy title of Chief Creative Officer, and I was a creative. I'm a designer by trade, visual designer by trade. But I think, as Rosemarie said, making a difference is one thing. Solving a problem is another thing. Problem solving is a term that gets used quite a bit. But increasingly, I was questioning, hey, is this the right problem to be solving? By the time it gets to my desk, to our office, to our company. And the majority of the client work that we have, we're kind of a unique establishment in that we have a client service business and we have a product incubation studio. It's about 2/3 of the company and 1/3 of the company. So this side of the company is building equity in our own company, and this side of the company is building equity in the client's business and help them grow is what we do. And we get given assignments that are really abstract and really broad, and there's no written brief most of the time. And it starts with a conversation, and it starts with not solving a problem, but finding the right problem to solve. Yeah. So I think that's one of the things that I now do fairly differently from my previous agency life, where we were given a brief and we were reacting to a certain brief and then trying to guess what the client wanted and what the audience wanted. Whereas now, the job starts, my job and our job starts finding the right problem to solve, and then finding that the right approach to solve that problem. So we're not necessarily defined by the output, because the output that we're doing today, that we've done in the past year and a half, that we're working on today, and the output that we would have next year would be drastically different, which, to be completely honest, makes it difficult to bias from the client perspective. And we had a conversation about what do CMOs need, but pretty much 100% of our clients, we start off with project-based assignments, and then now 75% of clients are retained relationships where we have a team and they ask random questions for us to think about, or we bring opportunities that they should be thinking about, and then find the approach from there.
Yeah. I mean, when we started, we said that, if a client comes to us and they know what they're looking for, we're probably not the right client. We're not the right company for them, because we really do need to help them work out exactly what the problem is they're trying to solve, and then we can decide together what the right thing for them is to kind of go and get done in the world. And I would say that Gareth and I were talking about this earlier. Most of the time, we're reframing what the clients are asking for. Most of the time. So they'll come in and they'll say, brand architecture or identity, or we need to know what our brand positioning is, or we need to work out how to sell more cereal or something. And like we say, okay, here is how we think about the world, and this is what we think drives growth. This is the process we go through to get there. Here's what that would look like for you. We'd love to be part of helping you kind of work that out. And they come along, and often it's a CMO. So we had a big existential crisis about which door we walked in order to make things happen in the world. And for a while we thought the CMO was probably not the right door. I think it probably depends on what the role of the CMO is inside the company. If they're in the communication, if they're about the service of communications, it usually isn't the right door. But I think their role has broadened to be about, we talked about this, right, to be about experiences. And so that's become better for us. And when we get in that door, they introduce us to the CEO. And we work with the leadership team on helping them craft that story and then what that means for their business moving forward. And that's, we're much further upstream, I think, than we were in the agency world.
Gareth, how does your background specifically inform what you're doing, since you did come from a more traditional?
I guess it's probably a personality trait and the world I came from. So I'm a very restless human being. So I always think there's a better way to go and do something. And I've got a bias towards kind of speed and high tempo. And unfortunately, the world I came from seems to want to fight against that, because the way we make money and the way we get rewarded is by, frankly, working slowly to go and have more time to go and bill against the clients. And I've spent about 2 years working with Google and the creative lab there, and that was the most eye-opening experience of my professional life about how much you could achieve with a small group of people who were just really tightly focused around a problem once they found what that problem should be to solve, and to break down the walls between disciplines. So that kind of relay race, but still sadly I think exists far too often, is broken down, and you're just seeing much more kind of interplay and blurring of disciplines and lines. So a lot of it was just about how can we work with clients to actually go and deliver a solution more quickly to help them move faster as an organization, and then frankly try and find ways to get rewarded for actually delivering stuff ahead of schedule rather than meeting schedules.
Yeah. Matt, we've talked about this. I mean, this puts you all in a different camp and a different competitive set, right? I mean, and I will say you all aggressively denounce the label agency.
Ray and Gareth and I were having drinks last night and remarking on what we all call ourselves. Are we a firm, a studio, a consultancy? And each of us had actually switched off, and we had tried one on, and that didn't work, and people, CEOs thought that was too limiting and the like. I think back to the original question of commonalities. I think there's commonality of all of us of aggressively challenging assumptions about how this business is supposed to work and the kind of routines that the large shops get into, because it's always worked before, and okay, let's just keep going with it till it doesn't work anymore. And I think all of us in our own way are trying to invent a new way of working for a new era, and we're willing to actually be the frontiersmen to slash that new trail. To the other side of the question of my particular background, I spent 8 years convincing people to move someplace, Boulder and Miami. Nobody who had kids wanted to live in Miami, and nobody who was 25 to 35 and single, and forget if you weren't white, wanted to live in Boulder. And I lost so many incredibly talented people because they wouldn't live within commuting distance of an office. And for me, who still lives in Boulder, my UX side of the brain said that's a terribly designed system. How many moms have I met who want to pick their kids up at 3 from school? Sorry, not interested. You won't be full time. That's not their problem. That's the system's problem. And 6 months of maternity doesn't solve that. And I just saw, when I started thinking about the operational design of so many of the agencies in the consultancy world, both on the product side, digital side, advertising, and the like, it felt like it needed a new way of thinking about the operations of how it works. We have no office, we're never going to have an office. We believe you can replicate the magic in the room and actually get better magic by breaking down the room altogether. And that challenging of assumptions and a dozen more in each of our own ways, I think we've all taken that to heart and said, no, we won't go status quo, there's gotta be a better way out there, and we're creative and have enough moxie to go try and invent it.
And I love what you're saying, because you're transforming how you deal with clients, but you're also transforming how you as a business are working, which is so fascinating as well. And that gets to my question about, the name of this is doing more with less. What does that look like? What is less? Talk a little bit about that.
When I was in the agency world, or when I had an agency, there are 3 things that, especially coming from creative side, 3 things that creatives love to have, but you will never have all of them at the same time. Money, time, and people. If you have one of those things, that's a pretty good project. Usually you have none of those. So you have to be sort of crafty, right? Those creatives want to take, we had this conversation how to manage creatives yesterday, and delicate flowers, and you kind of have to stroke their egos and then punch them a bit. I spent 15 years doing that. Anyways, so that's the pressure that we have. You'll never have enough time, money, or people to do it. So that's number 1. Number 2, it's getting cheaper and faster to get things done, to make things. Mm-hmm. And then to Gareth, the problem, the agency client, for the most part, not all the part, but for a lot of the part, the issue is the juxtaposition and the contradiction between how clients want to make money and how agencies want to make money. Agencies get compensated and I'm grossly oversimplifying it, but by being inefficient. The more time you spend, the more time you put people on, more people you put on, the more junior people you put on, the more bodies you put on, basically. Again, I'm oversimplifying it, I try to fix it within the existing system of a big networked agency world. I just, again, came to my midlife crisis and realized that I'm not getting any younger. And before it's too late, I needed to jump up.
Yeah, I think that, so for me, it's about having a very, very small core team, and then just bringing in the right ingredients when you need them. And for all the reasons that Ray said, that's very hard to do in a traditional structure because that's not how they make money. And that has proven, that means that if you have a very small, tight team, they can move faster, they can make decisions, they can have better conversations, and also having a really multifaceted team. So we don't need tons of different departments. That was like, we don't need the, digital department and the service design department we have strategists who span business, brand, comms, strategy. We have there are some who are more qualified in one than the other, but they learn from each other. We have people in experience who come from the content world, from the service design world, from the product design world, and we have kind of collaborators, which is our kind of fancy term for account people who kind of make all of that work, and then we bring people in from the outside as needed. So it's like bespoke to whatever the problem is, we're trying to solve.
Yeah. Gareth, am I right in saying that you do primarily project work by design?
We're project work driven by design. We think it's about making the relationship around the work.
Yeah.
We think that's absolutely critical. Obviously, you want to have repeat business over time and get the chance to have more at-bats. But I think, to your question, I think the thing we have to stop doing as an industry is basically stopping the kind of arms race of proliferation. I think we're going out there every day to try and build Homer Simpson's car. Do you remember that episode of The Simpsons where Homer Simpson got the chance to make his car? So he started off with the usual kind of car, and we just kept adding stuff to it like a bubble to keep the kids quiet, more horns. And it's always easier trying to think of something new just to go and add more stuff to what already exists. And I think there's just such proliferation, both in terms of the number of brands out there, the number of channels, the number of things we keep trying to make. So it's add the Snapchat campaign, add the social elements, add whatever it is du jour that's kind of seen as being hot and cool. And you see that in the specialization, both in terms of companies that advise clients, but also the skill sets that exist inside those companies. So, you look at the kind of fragmentation of strategy that's occurred. It's perhaps, I think, unsurprising that we have brands that feel quite fragmented as a result of that. So I think actually thinking about what the restriction strategy is for a brand, and actually the few things you should stop doing and the few things you should focus on becomes a much more potent way to grow a business and allows you to do a lot more with less resource.
Fewer better things.
Yeah.
And I love Gareth's point, and then going back to Rosemarie and Ray, the doing more with less from our side largely comes down to Ray's point about how a lot of other agencies are staffed. It's a business designed to age people out. It's a business designed for that 24-year-old coming in who will take a 30-year salary, work 17 hours a day, and put you out to pasture, client side when the agency is done with you. And for me, you can't do more with less because all of your experience is going out the door because you got a culture and a system that's not designed for them. I mean, a lot of what we're trying to do to be able to do more with less is age people in, not age them out. It's like, I don't want the 24-year-old. I want the grown-up who doesn't take 60 hours when it should only take 30 hours to get this done, to get to great work. And so, if you can start to harness that experience in a system that's well designed, you can do a lot more with less because you have a lot more experience in your ranks to activate against, which saves both money and time.
I mean, we work with,
Go ahead.
we work with Greenstone. So we bring them in on projects and they make us look great. And the whole virtual thing works really well. Because we all speak the same language and we're all trying to get the same thing done.
And that's where, the other thing that binds us is I love all of the people on stage because they ask the right questions, even if we don't have the answers. Like, they continuously ask questions that, inspire me and challenge those assumptions. And it's like, oh, I never thought of that before. And even just going through Co's offices and hearing the case studies in their little, U walkway. I mean, just some really fascinating questions that go back to what Ray was talking about of just, making sure you're tackling the right thing at a strategic level and oftentimes outside of the CMO side of things. And that's where probably the last thing that unites us is all of us really bristle when you say advertising around us because all of us have danced in that world in the past, but just feel like there's so much more opportunity to move beyond everything is a nail, you know, if you start asking other questions.
I think doing more with less. I think, you know, if clients start with thinking about how they get clear about their story and they build that into their products and services, that's going to cost them a lot less money. Because that will build experiences that people talk about that then maybe are worth advertising. They will actually save money if they actually start there versus
I want to come back to that. I want to come back to that. I know, Ray, you were
Yeah,
gonna say
one thing
something real
that
quick.
just play off of what Matt was saying, slightly different topic, working moms. And I have 2 kids, and shamefully, I don't do a lot of the drop-offs that I should be doing. And what my wife observed was that a lot of the moms in Brooklyn, and they are super educated, super qualified people, like lawyers and multiple graduate degrees and PhDs. And because their kids are young and they primarily have taken on the responsibilities of looking after the kids, and for like a 5-year duration that they take on the responsibility. And there's a service that we've used, which is a network of qualified moms.
Great.
Yeah, and people who have MBAs, very experienced. And our lead strategist that we've used from day one, she lives in New Jersey. She barely comes into our office. We talk and work with her using, a Hangout or Skype. She works for us, anywhere between 20 and 30 hours a week. She just had her 3rd kid, came back from maternity leave last week, and she's our main strategist.
Yeah.
And in the traditional agency world, that wasn't a sustainable model. And doing, again, more with less is creating a system that works for qualified people regardless of gender and age and experience, especially more senior people. The rate that you pay might be more, but you end up saving more because you get things done much more quickly.
Well, and we were talking earlier about, it's a different topic, but diversity and inclusion. Having a diversity of thought and perspective goes so much. There's so many ways to look at that, and that's one way, and bringing that on. But so thank you for that. Back to Rosemarie's point about, you can only be as successful as what clients ultimately demand of you, as best as you can push. You know what I mean? So what are clients valuing now? What are they asking for? And sort of where are you meeting them in the middle between what you want to be and do and what they are asking for?
So I think clarity and focus for the organization so they can prioritize where they're putting their energy and time. A sense of identity that they can then build into. They value us bringing their organization together because they are pretty siloed.
Very much.
Don't work in a collaborative fashion, so they actually need someone who can help pull them together and also teach their people new skills. We do a lot of work inside organizations, I'm sure you do, right? Helping them understand what that story is and what that means for what they do every day. So you're like stop and start. We talk about what are you going to start doing, what are you going to stop doing, what are you going to do more of. But priority and focus they're desperate for it because there is so much stuff out there. If you think about the number of platforms, the publishers who are coming after them, like the agencies, everyone has something that they all have to offer. But putting that together into something that's coherent and compelling and doesn't take 25 more people and $200 million more is hard.
Well, and even just educating, CMOs or CEOs on what it is you all do and the value that you bring as opposed to anyone else. That's, in some places, I'm sure there's a bigger learning curve there than others. So that becomes a challenge for you, right, Gareth?
I think so, but I think, there's ways you can try and push off what they already know. So if you can bring the objectivity that a consultancy can bring, be that a brand or a management consultancy, but rather than deliver PowerPoint, actually deliver things and actually deliver prototypes, that I think becomes quite compelling because you're actually adding something that is additive to an experience they already know and value. But I think you're trying to show that, you can help them more quickly increase their competitive advantage because they've got a prototype of thing that they can put into the world and learn
And by
from.
not owning the means of production,
Yes.
Like by not owning the specific means of production, you will be seen as being more objective in terms of what answer you're bringing.
So is it impossible for other traditional agencies to do more with less?
It's very simple. Just don't bring more than 5 people to a meeting.
Yeah.
Like really, start there and just stick to it. Just leave it at that.
Yeah.
I would say, I would totally echo what Ray said. I would also say, the fascinating part for me is seeing how many of the challenges that we're describing, and as things go in-house, client side,
Yeah.
seeing the same things come up there.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
like just putting the agency inside P&G or GM or whatever else doesn't change the underlying problems with the model. It just ports them from one company to another. And so I think both client side and agency side, that piece of how do we challenge our own internal assumptions and optimize the way that we work to be a little bit smarter, definitely applies to all. And it's capable, I think all of them are capable of doing it, but no doubt, the bigger the bloat, the more challenging it gets, for sure.
Great. All right. Well, listen, thank you all so much. We're out of time, unfortunately, but please join me in thanking you.